And this is a Euro game that can be played competitively or cooperatively, but the premise here is that you and the other players are playing as different factions that are trying to fight back against a force of dragons that are taking over the world. And these factions do play a little bit differently from each other with some different abilities and benefits, but players are each going to have two different player boards. One's going to be tracking your stats and resources, while the other one is acting kind of as your skill tree, where you're going to be able to upgrade different aspects of your faction, like their strength, defense, resource collection, or special abilities. Players will be setting up the board with some randomized tiles with different terrain on them, and then depending on the difficulty that you want to play, you're going to be putting out a certain number of dragon nests. The game plays over 5 rounds, and at the start of each round you're going to be rolling dragon dice for each of those nests, which will increase the strength of that nest anywhere from 1 to 3. And the interesting thing about this is that if a nest gets over a certain value, it's going to be spitting out those excess dragons. These dragons will spill into the different terrain around the nest, attacking other players or bases that the players have built. But each player is going to have a certain amount of actions that they can perform within a round, and players are going to be taking turns performing their different actions, placing or moving workers out on the board, using those workers to collect resources, spending those resources at the market in order to upgrade their stats or skill tree, or even to gain prestige, which I will come back to in a minute. Players will also be able to spend their resources to build outposts on any of the tiles that they occupy. And this is going to allow them to generate resources of a certain type depending on the terrain that they build that outpost on. And building these outposts does net you a certain amount of prestige, which I'll just come back to now, because the next action you can perform is to fight a dragon. But in order to fight a dragon, you need a certain amount of prestige, because no dragon's going to bother trying to stick around and fight with you unless that dragon thinks you are worthy to battle. Of course, you're also going to want as much strength as possible, because that's going to heighten your odds of actually winning your fight against that dragon. Because each dragon involved in the battle is going to be adding a certain amount of strength that will increase each round. But then you're also going to be rolling a dragon die that will be adding additional strength to those dragons. This works very similar to the players, where each of your characters is going to be adding a certain amount of strength, and then you're also going to be rolling your own die and then performing different abilities and actions using cards and abilities that you might have with your faction in order to try and increase your strength as much as possible. And in order to win the game, you need to destroy all the dragon nests before the end of the game, but you also have to destroy a nest every single round, and if you fail to do either of those, then you lose the game. But in the competitive mode, it is all about gaining victory points, so instead of fulfilling those requirements, it's just the player with the most victory points at the end of the game who wins the game.